Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Rails Board meeting. I'm Michael Campbell, President of the Rails Board. This is Friday, May 28th, 2021, and I call this meeting to order at 10 a.m. Emily, will you please call roll?
Sure. Duke Hustenberg.
Here.
Ellie Cox. Percy Harris. Diane Hollister. Chris Kenny.
Here.
Sarah McCone Chase.
Here.
Jennifer McIntosh.
Here.
Paul Mills.
Sure.
Jenna Namek-Luisi.
Here.
Scott Poynton.
Here.
Becky Spratford.
Here.
Thomas Stagg.
Here.
Beth Teppen.
Here.
Alex Vancina.
Here.
And Michael Campbell.
Here.
We have a quorum.
I think Diane just came in.
Okay, thank you.
Emily. And hi, Hallie.
And Hallie's here.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. In accordance with the Government Emergency Administration Act number PA 100-0640, the Rails Board of Directors finds an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent and believes that it is in the best interest of Rails to hold a virtual meeting to perform essential business. Also, in order to comply with the Open Meetings Act, anyone is allowed to join the meeting as an attendee. Any comments put into the chat during the public comment period will be read aloud. We will handle guest and public comments at this time. Let's start with guests here in Burr Ridge. Deidre, will you start?
Yes, Deirdre Brennan, Rails.
Monica Harris, Rails.
Okay. Any public comments from Burr Ridge? Okay. East Peoria.
Hi, Kendall Orison, Rails.
Robin Hohenthal.
Any public comments from East Peoria?
Nope.
Nope.
Illinois State. Excuse me? Were there
Hi,
any
this
public
is Karen
comments?
Egan. No public comments at this time.
Thank you, Karen. Emily, any other guests that we have?
So many. We have myself, Emily Feister, Rails, Jim Krieger, Rails. We have Charm Runke from the Peru Public Library, Ryan Hebel, Rails, Jessica Barnes, Rails, Jody Rubel, Rails, Joe Philippik, Rails, Mary Witt, Rails, Ann Slaughter, Rails, Mark Hatch, Rails, Lila Heath, Rails, and Kathy Parker, consultant extraordinaire.
Okay, thank you. If Emily has not read your name, please state your name and your affiliation or put it in the Zoom chat so that she can read it and add it to the minutes. Also, Emily, did you receive any comments via email?
I did not.
Okay. If not, does anyone have any public comments at this time? Okay. We will move on to the consent agenda. You will notice that there's a change to the consent agenda, which includes minutes from both the Rails policy and executive committees, which is new. It's generally agreed by legal counsel that no one needs to abstain from approving minutes as long as your fellow board members who were in attendance at those meetings raise no objections to the minutes. Does anyone wish to move any items to the regular agenda for further discussion? Okay. May I have a motion and a second for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved, Alex Vancina.
Okay. Thank you, Alex.
I'll second. This is Scott.
Moved by Alex, seconded by Scott. Emily, will you please call roll?
Sue Busenbark,
Yes.
Ellie Cox,
Yes.
Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Chris Kenny,
Yes.
Sarah McCone Chase,
Yes.
Jennifer McIntosh,
Yes.
Paul Mills,
Yes.
Jenna Nameklewisi,
Yes.
Scott Poynton,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg,
Yes.
Beth Teppen,
Yes.
Alex Vancina,
Yes.
Michael Campbell.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Next is Jim Krieger with the financial report.
Jim, if you're talking, we
Jim,
can't
you're
hear
muted.
you.
I thought I unmuted. Okay, here we go
Start
again.
over.
Okay, well, you have in your packet the financial report for the month of April. We're 10 months through the fiscal year now, only 2 months remaining. The big news, big event in April was that we received an area and per capita grant payment of $6,435,000 on April 30th. This completes the funding of fiscal year 21 as far as the area and per capita grant is concerned. And this is the earliest in a fiscal year that we have received our entire year of payments. And we also received earlier 5.3 million of payments related to the prior year fiscal year award. So we got quite an influx of cash this year. So this has resulted in our operational coverage of nearly 2 years, 23.8 months. The other highlights, the trends pretty much remain the same. The revenues, of course, are now well over budget because of the receiving the area and per capita grant payments. Investment income remains well below budget because the rates are less than 0.1% and 1% was budgeted. Our expenditures are through April were $623,587 below budget. They will remain well below budget for the rest of this year. I think we'll be at least $400,000 to $500,000 below budget. We had deferred a number of expenditures, the main one being the salary increases, and we did implement that. We also have deferred the expenditures of about $125,000 on laptop computers. We have ordered those and put those out for bid. We got quotes, and they will cost right about the $125,000 that was budgeted, but they may not be available until next year. So that expense may end up being next year instead of this year. But the order has been made. Otherwise, we on the special revenue funds, we continue to purchase ebook content for children. We've have about 50,000 left to go, and we expect on our grant of 125,000, and we expect to complete that by the end of this fiscal year. Are there any questions I can answer?
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Okay, moving on to item number 7 on the agenda. We'll start with reports. Item number 7.1 is reports from the Rails president. I have no reporting other than to say that we will have a closed session at the end of the meeting today. Item 7.2, the Rails Board Committee reports, the board committee chairs. You should have received the reports for the Advocacy Committee, the Policy Committee, Resource Committee, and Resource Sharing, and EDI was all sent to all board members on Wednesday. And we will proceed to ask if there are any updates or questions for each report. Jenna for Advocacy.
Yes, thank you, Michael. The Advocacy Committee met on May 13th, and my report is included in the board packet. Are there any questions that I can answer for you about the items that we discussed or updates?
Okay, moving on. Consortia, I believe, did not meet.
That is correct, sir.
Okay. EDI, Diane.
We met on April 21st, and Ms. Lindsay gave a terminology training. And then my report is in the packet as well. Are there any questions this time? I just want to say that we're proceeding swimmingly, we're proceeding very well this time. Thank you.
Okay. On the executive committee, the topics at the committee meeting will be discussed under item 9.2, so we do have several topics to discuss. Next is Kathy Parker with the report from the nominating committee. Is
Yes, thank
Kathy online?
Yes, I'm here. The nominating committee met on Monday to verify the results of the election. One of our goals was to have a diverse candidate pool, and we really did have a diverse candidate pool. Unfortunately, we did not have as many diverse winners, if you will, if that's the proper term. But I'm sure you all have received the Rails e-news with the list of the winning candidates, but I'll just reiterate those just to put it on the official record. We had one incumbent, Thomas Stagg from Alpha Park. So congratulations, Thomas. The two other public library trustees were Alec Creason from Richton Park Public Library and Karen Wojcik from Sherwood Troy Public Library. We had two at-large seats, Robin Hellenthal, Manager of Collection Development Services for Peoria Public, and Patricia Smith, the Director of the Robert Rowe Public Library District. The committee will create a slate, and that will be, and then once that slate has been created, I will contact those people that we've selected to see if they're interested in being in an officer position. And then once, assuming that they have accepted, or if they haven't, we have our second choices, then that will be presented at the June board meeting. We thank you for allowing us to work on this nominating committee. We really enjoyed it. Any questions?
I don't have a question, Kathy, but I would just say that, I'm always glad to get new board members, but it's most unfortunate that some of our incumbent colleagues were not successful, notably Michael and Sarah and Percy Harris, who's not here. So
that does kind of, there's always a concern about continuity, and
right.
that is a concern. But I think that the candidates will, or the successful electorates will do well in their positions. So they'll learn. We all learn when we were on the board. So thank you.
Right. And there'll be some further conversation about the election later on, just the process. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Kathy.
Sure.
Thanks, Kathy, and we'll see you next month when you present the slate of officers.
Yes. And then I'm gonna go. I've got a graduation party to get ready for.
Okay.
Have fun.
Enjoy.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, next up is Tom with the Policy Committee.
The policy committee did meet
and you should have that in your packet. We did recommend that the board accept the new bylaws as presented. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask.
And we will discuss those under items 8.1.
Right.
Resource Sharing Committee, Monica.
The Resource Sharing Committee did meet on May 10th. You do have the written report, and I don't have any additional updates to that. Are there any questions about resource sharing?
I would, no, but I don't think, well, I don't know. I don't have a question, but I was just going to say that you and Sharm are going to talk about resource sharing later.
That's true,
as
which
well.
will include some discussion that has happened at the Resource Sharing Committee.
Right. Okay.
Thank you for being here today, Sure.
Hi, this is Jennifer. I just have a quick question. Just a comment I'd like to make. I just want to thank you for inviting Lois Bruno from Mill Rock to join the Resource Sharing Committee. That's just kind of a nice way for us to bring the community college voices into the conversation more formally. I just really thank you for extending that offer to her.
We're thrilled that she joined.
We are really thrilled that Lois will be on board, and we think she brings a really valuable perspective to the committee. Thanks for mentioning it, Jennifer.
And the Universal Service Committee did not meet. Is that correct, Sue?
That's correct. We do have a meeting scheduled for Thursday, June 10th from 1 to 3.
Great. Thank you. Next up is the Rails report. Deidre.
Yes, thank you. So you have my written report also. So I would just add and update a few things. First of all, you see I wrote the opening paragraph here is about COVID, of course. We are working on some draft policies related to vaccinations, which we will be proposing to the board and the policy committee that it be a voluntary vaccination policy, but we don't have it ready yet, but we will bring that to you at some point. Just wanted to give you a heads up about that. Elsewhere in the report, you will find in response to feedback from the engagement survey, the board engagement survey, we've provided some talking points this month related to the service of the month, which is Explore More. So you'll find that attached to this report. And also in the This Month at Rails report, there's that megaphone symbol, which is other information that you can use for advocacy purposes or, talking about Rails services. In terms of East Peoria, we think that, well, we more than think, we are we're having excuse me, attorney look at a lease on the Sabrina Drive building, which is like a mile and something away across the interstate from the current building. So we think it's going to work out fine. We're still trying to figure out the build out costs, but Jim has determined very happily that this will end up being a reduction in costs for us on an annual basis. It will be cheaper. And we owe heartfelt thanks to RSA staff for being willing to I won't say squeeze, but move into a much smaller facility. That, of course, is one of the main reasons why it's going to be cheaper. But everybody thinks it will work, and we're just waiting for the lease. I think we'll be moving out on, I think, June 26th.
That's the current plan.
So with 4 days to spare.
Oh, geez, Louise.
So really remarkable feat on Mark's part, and his team, obviously, and Monica, and getting this all together. Again, thank you to facilities and to RSA for, making this work and, be as smooth as possible for service to members. Did I leave anything out, Monica? Has anything happened since I heard this?
No, our legal counsel's looking over the lease now with some pieces that were there, but we've been very happy with the relationship with the landlord there, and he's offered a lot of credits for business improvement, although we still have some additional work that we're going to need to do just to make it fit all of our needs. So we're very
Congratulations, Beth, pulling out such a logistical.
I know, right?
Such a short time.
It's like, hey, COVID's slowing down. Let's add something else.
I know, exactly.
That's what it felt like. Good job.
Right, and, there's not a lot of real estate. I mean, we did look.
Yes.
Obviously, we pursued any possible alternatives, but weren't many. So, very, very great job by the delivery folks. I think that's all I have for now. Any questions?
Oh, wait, I did have a question. I made a note. You mentioned that you're making vaccines optional. You didn't say anything about masks. Are we going to give people guidance on masks?
Yes.
Okay.
Be related to the.
Okay, you just didn't say it explicitly, so because I know a lot of libraries are looking for guidance.
Yeah, well, the guidance thing is, yes, we actually asked Julie Tappendorf to do an FAQ. Monica and Joe worked on, what are the questions that are most coming up?
Yeah.
And so we just got I think a draft of that. So
Yeah, draft
we
last
should have
week.
that next week.
Oh, great, because that's the biggest question right now is, I think the vaccinations, a lot of libraries have already sort of navigated the whole not making it mandatory, but getting staff appointments thing, but it's the masks that everybody's asking.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Did you want to talk about updating the calendar?
Oh, yes. We think it makes more sense. There's the calendar is attached to this as well. And we're going to change the review of closed session to January and June. It just seems to make more sense those months for when we do it. And I was talking to Michael the other day. We have some dates in here about my review, but I think because it's only done once a year, for which I can say I'm extremely grateful, actually, but just because it's only done once a year, we kind of forget from year to year. So we're gonna codify it in here because this says, it's in here, but really we've gotten into the practice, which I think is good, of discussing it in May, not June. I think that's better just in case something comes up. So we'll change that around for next year.
Yeah, we've been lucky that, like this year, we've had Paul, that I've had Paul to, like, he was the previous president.
History, right.
But like this next year, I won't be on the board, so there would be nobody to.
Right,
or
exactly.
Paul.
Right.
So there would be nobody to fall back on.
With institutional memory.
Right.
Right. So, which is exactly what Kathy was referring to as well. So, anyway, yes. So.
Yeah. Okay. Next up is Jessica Barnes who will present the service of the month.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Okay, great. Hi, my name is Jessica Barnes. I'm Special Projects Librarian here at Rails, and I work on the Explore More Illinois project. I'm just going to share my screen because I wanted to show the login screen to Explore More. So let me just get that set up. And hopefully you can see the login screen to Explore More. If you're not aware, Explore More Illinois is Rails Museum Pass program and also recreation, experience, historical homes, We have offerings from performing arts centers, all kinds of places around the state. We started in April of 2019 and had to shut down in March of 2020. I sent an email to all of our library members saying we would be shut down for 2 weeks, and we did not restart until April 1st of 2021. So it's almost been 2 months now that we've restarted. Every library who joins Explore More Illinois receives a login page like this. Users just put in their library barcode and PIN number. And once they log in, they see offers around the state. You can see right now we have several things in Springfield. Those are the first two things, like Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library Museum, Edwards Place. For people closer to Chicago, there's the Hemingway Birthplace Museum. We're getting a lot of traction with Parks and Recs departments. So you can see Galesburg, Parks and Rec. But I just did a presentation for someone and they said it's like Groupon for libraries, and I really liked that. There's free admission, buy one, get one admission, discounts for parking, cafes, gift stores. The attractions can make whatever offer they want that they think will best fit their needs. Let me just stop sharing for a sec. So while we were shut down, we actually were quite busy. We now have over 350 libraries who are participating in Explore More, and that includes IHLS libraries who joined while we were shut down. So we have several, actually not more than several. We have, I think, 55 IHLS libraries on board with us right now. They were added during the shutdown. We also updated and streamlined the Explore More Illinois website, which is exploremoreillinois.org. And I would really encourage you to visit that. We have a short 4-minute video that explains how the whole program works. We also have a recruitment email. So if you know of any attractions that might be interested in this, there's a template that you can send to them that gives them information about Explore More Illinois and how it works. Just a reminder, there's no cost for libraries or the attractions to participate. Rails pays for the annual platform fee for our software. This allows patrons to access attractions around the state and provides experiences that they might not otherwise have been able to attend without the discount. And we're creating partnerships with these attractions around the state. There's talking points, like Deirdre said, in your packet. And I encourage you to spread the word about Explore More, especially since we've just restarted. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about the program. Jennifer?
Hi.
Hi.
I was actually just talking about Explore More with one of our librarians the other day. She's part of the business networking group, and they were talking about this and what a great thing it is. And I don't think at this point it's possible for academic libraries to participate. Is there any progress or discussion around that topic, particularly those that represent a public area like a community college district?
We've gotten some questions from us. I haven't gotten any from four-year academics, but quite a few community colleges have reached out to me. So we are aware that community colleges are interested, and actually Layla Heath and I are going to talk about that later this summer. And just, I can't make any promises of what's going to happen, but we're aware that there's an interest and we're going to investigate it a little bit.
I think there's a gap there, and that would really be a great way to address it, because there's an age group there that is probably not always thinking about engaging this way. And we're getting them at a really critical time when they're in college, obviously, just kind of getting them really engaged more civically. So I hope we can look at it as really kind of fostering future, long-term engagement over their whole life by looking at college students particularly.
Absolutely. And I know for so many community college students, they use the community college library as their main library, maybe more than the public library. We just have to look at concerns, especially about just the way that our platform fee is paid. It's per, it's based on population of the state and then some overlap and things. So these are all things that we are going to talk about.
And then there's those unserved, there's that unserved population that
absolutely
we're addressing also. So again, we're maybe the way to address that group.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Jennifer. I think, when we launched this, we just launched it in the simplest, cleanest way that we could. But I think at this point, it's definitely time to look at that. Yeah, so. This is a great resource sharing project.
Absolutely.
Obviously. So we want to make it as available as possible, but, having that year off kind of stymied some of our progress, but we're back and better than ever, so.
Good. Any other questions for Jessica? Okay, let's move to item 7.4, the Illinois State Library.
Good morning, everyone. I bring greetings from Secretary White and, of course, our Director, Greg McCormick. We are delighted to be with you today on this stormy day in Springfield. I see from Jim's window that it looks like it's windy up in your area as well. We've got a lot going on at the State Library right now. We have been reviewing a number of grant applications. We just finished up applications to support Talking Book and Braille patrons. We are looking at the fiscal year 22 Project Next Generation grants, the fiscal year 22 digital imaging grants. You probably, if you were the recipient of one, the Live and Learn construction grants, those receiving awards should have gotten their award letters by now, and the official press release will be coming out very shortly on that one. The public library per capita and equalization aid grants have been reviewed, and awards are pending on that. As of yesterday, Senate Bill 2232 passed, which is very exciting, because that increases the public library per capita grant award from $1.25 to $1.475. We expect that the FY21 awards will be at the higher amount, but we have to wait for the governor to sign the bill before we can actually issue the awards. So that's exciting news. And once he does sign it, if you are in a school district, we will go back, hopefully, and be able to increase your FY21 award to accommodate for the increase in, as well, the school per capita grant. So that's exciting on that front as well. The Secretary's budget for FY22 was submitted to sustain library and literacy programs at FY21 levels. Now we're waiting for final legislative confirmation before we can move forward with any FY22 funding, and that'll impact libraries, literacy programs, the system grants as well for the coming year. We are looking forward to getting the system area and per capita grant applications, and those are due coming up next week. So we look forward to getting those. One other thing that I hope you all take note of, and Director McCormick has been mentioning this whenever he can, we are winding down the awards for the Federal CARES Act funds. And those final reports are coming in as libraries are starting to, finish up their PPE grants and their digital network access grants and their Back to Books grants. And we are ramping up now the American Recovery Plan Act of 2021 awards that will be announced soon. So you might be thinking about what you learned this past year, and perhaps using grant funds to impact services that were affected by the pandemic, or to look at the library and spaces that you might need to make some modifications without construction, of course, but that might mean bringing in movable wall dividers on wheels that could break up a room into smaller areas, any number of things for the capacity of the library, and then looking at the needs of the workforce in your community and how the library might support the evolving needs of, say, job seekers. So just to give you a couple of hints of what to come, without saying anything more specific than that. So do you have any questions for me that I can answer? All right, well, if not, you know where we are. Feel free to contact us anytime. And with that, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you this morning.
Thank you, Karen. So now we'll move on to new business and some bylaw changes. Item number 8 and 8.1, which will move to Tom and Deidre. So item 8.1 is bylaw changes. Tom, do you and Deidre want to?
Do you want to start, Tom, or do you want me to? Or?
Okay, I can start.
Okay.
Everyone has a report from the policy committee regarding the changes to the bylaws. The changes included changing language in Article 2, purpose to reflect the Rails mission statement. Also adding language regarding number and composition of a nominating committee. We also added EDI language regarding recruitment. Also included in the packet are the track changes and a clean copy of the bylaws. Does anyone have any questions? Deidre, do you have anything to add?
No, I think it was no, I think that's it. What we did.
This is Scott. I'll make a motion that we approve these changes.
We have a second.
I'll second. It's Hallie.
So Emily, will you call roll?
Ellie Cox,
Yes.
Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Chris Penny,
Yes.
Sarah McCone Chase,
Yes.
Jennifer McIntosh,
Yes.
Paul Mills,
Yes.
Joanna McLuisi,
Yes.
Scott Poynton,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg,
Yes.
Beth Teppen,
Yes.
Alex Fancina,
Yes.
Sue Busenbark,
Yes.
and Michael Campbell.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is the election report and role of the nominating committee. This is a discussion only item. Deidre?
Thank you. Yes, I just thought that, especially in light of the bylaws changes, it kind of brought a lot of things into my mind, and then the fact that we just had the election. So I thought I would just sort of lay out some sort of my perspective on how this goes, just make sure that you all know what the process is of how the election works. So, and you know, ironically, we just updated the bylaws to fix the nominating committee, but I'm afraid that I have to tell you that I think that it's really not a nominating committee. I think it's kind of the election oversight committee or something, which may mean, sorry, Tom, that we need to change the bylaws again. I don't know. We don't have to worry about it right now. But the thing is that the nominating committee implies, I think, that the nominating, that they select the nominees. And really, it's very self-selected. When you're all on the board, you know that. I mean, sometimes, yes, the nominating committee members in the past have encouraged people to self-nominate, but it's not like the nominating committee decides who the people are who are going to be the candidates for the board. And I think that's. I mean, that's the way it is in Heartland. That's the way it is here. It's a very open process. The members decide, and then obviously the members vote. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with this at all. This is the way, this is the culture, this is how it works. But I think it's confusing that we have this group that's called the nominating committee when it is, you know, especially if you're not like immersed in the cultural systems and libraries like Paul Mills and I and Scott and, you know, other, you know, librarian types are. You might think that it's a nominating committee that will select these. You see where I mean, you understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, it sort of implies that the nominating committee is deciding who's being on the board.
And then, yeah. And I mean, there's a reason why it is the way it is, and I think it's good, but I think that maybe we need to think about changing that as we go forward. I also think that, you know, I think that we did a really good job. The committee did a very good job. And I would say the Rails staff, especially Mary Witt. I mean, you know, we advertised this, publicized it, explained our, you know, desire for, you know, more diverse, equitable, inclusive, you know, board and therefore candidate pool. And we got a lot of great candidates from all walks of library life. But, you know, at the end of the day, only about 200 people or libraries vote out of 1,260. And I think that that's a problem. I mean, I don't know that there's much we can, I don't know how much we can fix that, but we have some ideas about how we might be able to fix that, or at least bring more visibility to the fact that there is an election going on and what it means. For example, having Zoom, you know, webinars with the candidates and the membership to sort of get them, to, you know, let them get to know each other. You know, different things like that. Because, you know, it's important that we have a really, really good board. And I think that, you know, just as because we have a very large, you know, system geographically, and it's very diverse in many ways, you know, people don't feel some libraries don't feel as connected to Rails as they may be used to their smaller, more localized system. And I think it's our responsibility to try to, you know, fix that, you know, in a lot of ways. So I'm not offering anything, like I say at this point. I just wanted to give you my perspective. I really appreciate that Michael, you know, brought this up as an issue, this nominating, you know, to begin with, because it's kind of, you know, led me to think, and a lot of us at Rails to think about this and how we can do a better job engaging the members, because it's important. As we all know, voting is an important thing. So I just wanted to, you know, just say all that. I'm happy to answer questions, and you know, I think as we move forward and we work on this more, we'll certainly keep the board informed about it. And if you have any suggestions, we'd love to hear them.
This is Becky. I thought it was great and scared that we had so many people running, but I do think it's a sign of the fact that over COVID, a lot more library workers have engaged with Rails in a more meaningful way, because, and you've commented in that in reports, even I think a report this month about how many people come to the member updates now, how many more people are engaged. Right. So when I saw how many people were running, I was a little worried about how many were running, but it was nice to see. So, but I do think because there is more engagement, your idea of having candidate forums is an excellent idea. I mean, I just did a candidate forum when I ran for re-election, even though the library position in our town was unopposed, we still were asked to be there. Sure. Give a 2-minute statement, just so people could meet us. There was, and then they gave the most of the time to the opposed race, which was Park District. But it was important. It was important for everyone to get a chance for people to see. And it does, I think, raise. I mean, we had in tiny little Grange, I mean, I got like 1,500 votes. That's a lot for an off election in a tiny town like that. So people did come out when they didn't really have to. Like one race was opposed. So I think I think we should definitely pursue that.
Yeah. Yeah, so, right, yeah.
I think that statistic is super powerful, that only 1 in 6 libraries
Yeah.
cast a vote.
Mhm.
I mean,
Sad.
it's, I don't know if we want to, wear that on our sleeves, but I think if we did wear it on our sleeves, it would maybe shame more libraries into voting, because
Yeah.
that's an awful statistic. I mean, it's really bad,
It's like when they certify, did you vote also,
Oh, I like that. 'Cause it's around the same time.
Yeah, it's around the same time,
Yeah,
so.
It might just remind them. I'm sure there's a lot of libraries who just forgot with the certification and other things on their mind, budgets. I mean, like for village libraries, it's the same time as budgets are turning over. It's a busy time.
The other thing is, I think that people who are running, I see Jenna. Anybody else want to make a comment too besides Jenna? I think people who are running need to come to a Rails board meeting and see what's happening for Rails too, and have some interaction with Rails too. So, Jenna.
Thank you so much, Michael. I just wanted to bring a perspective of the way that how elections are working in Rails sort of mirrors how they work nationally. As someone who has been very involved in ALA and was on the board of directors for an ALA division, I will say that the situation is very similar. Nationally, the amount of people who are ALA members who actually vote in elections the percentage is so very small, and the percentage is shrinking every year. And we are consistently in ALA trying to figure out how we can boost that member engagement, figure out why people aren't voting, and what it might look like and what it might mean to boost that engagement. And I will offer the perspective of what Deirdre is saying about the nominating committee and that nomenclature. So I do think that the idea of a nominating committee and a committee that is more involved in maybe recruiting candidates for a ballot and maybe deciding who eventually ends up on a ballot really makes sense for an organization that is very, very large. So when I was on the board for the Association for Library Service to Children, we would literally get dozens and dozens and dozens of people who wanted to run for our board positions, who wanted to be on the Caldecott or the Newberry Committee, who wanted to be on the various things that would eventually end up on the slate. And it just wasn't feasible for everyone who expressed interest to be on the ballot, because the ballot would be a mile long and people would be dissuaded from voting just because of all of the candidates that they would have to look at. So I think if Rails were ever to get to the point, and it is a nice problem to have, where we have so many people who express interest in being on the board that it is not feasible for the ballot to be that long, I think a nominating committee can come into play, and the nominating committee then could decide, of everyone who expressed interests, who would bring the best experience to the board, who might balance out who's already there, who might have that institutional memory, who might have that perspective of who is already there and the strategic direction that the board is going. I think a nominating committee makes sense. But I do think that Deirdre, your idea of an election oversight committee and maybe calling it that at this point in where Rails is at can be really valuable and really better describes the role of what that committee is currently doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I'm just keeping in mind the membership and what they're used to, what they expect. And yeah, I don't have an answer, but I like what you're saying. I'm open.
Yep.
We just want it to work, I think, better than it's working.
Any other comments?
I had my hand up. I'll just jump in. This is Jennifer. A thought I had that was kind of rolling through my head as I was kind of trying to think through this problem is that Rails has a really large, robust staff, and we get a lot of communications from the staff. It seems like a very staff-driven organization if you're not really engaged with board activity. And I'm wondering if that might be part of it, is that while we acknowledge that boards are important and obviously have an oversight and governance role, I wonder how much for the people who we're asking to vote, how important board elections seem to them when Rails moves. The very public work of Rails is very staff oriented in many ways. So maybe what the board is doing and why our role is important maybe just needs to be just kind of integrated more organically into the way we present the organization. I don't know, it's just something I can't say I really thought about the board of Rails too much until recent years. So it's just I know it's a weird comment maybe, but
no, I
sense them.
You and 1,200 and 1,400 other people, I guess.
And I can say the ballot was very long. It took a very long time to read through it. I'll just say that also.
That's not even the most people we've ever had. We always get a lot of nominees.
I almost didn't have time to really do it. I was like, oh, this is going to take a while. Okay.
I'm sorry. This is Hallie. A thought I had too, while you guys are all talking about this, is maybe to have the board members as pushed out further as resources by the staff. Like when the staff is pushing out, it'd be helpful to talk to this person or that person, to make sure to try to include, board members as frontline resources. That to sort of make them more visible and sort of have that contact with the membership. Support the membership. Yeah. I don't know.
This is Jenna. I really like that idea, Hallie. I really like that there can be an additional person that when a communication, so for example, if something were going out about school libraries and advocacy for school libraries, if my name and contact information were at the end as a current practitioner and somebody who wants to advocate for the purpose and value of strong and meaningful libraries, and you want to have your voice heard, not that they certainly couldn't reach out to one of our wonderful Rails board members, but if they wanted to have someone who's actually doing the work, hear what they have to say and bring it forward to the board, I think that can be a really, something that we could really implement quickly. And I think it could be really effective. It could be a good litmus test to see if people are responding to that and if that boosts engagement in any way.
Taking that even a step further, this is Becky, like including a board member in member updates, the meeting, so that their faces get out there. And even maybe finding a way like at ILA to present here's what's happening on the Rails board panel, or even if we could find a way to do it with both systems, right? And we had some key people, and obviously not everybody on both boards, but, especially people who are on the board and considering running in the next election, allow them a chance, to be there. And it's also a way to let exactly what Haley and Jenna are saying, let the whole membership know what the boards are doing. I can't see why ILA wouldn't allow us to do something like that at a conference. It seems like even during trustee day, if it had to be then, but because then at least you have the people voting, right? The people running the libraries and the trustees who are involved. And it would be a good recruitment tool too.
Yep. Well, we'll keep working on it. We'll keep talking about it. So,
good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up is item number 8.3, compensation plan and the organizational chart. And Deidre.
Yes, I'm going to let Monica start us off here. If she would.
Sure thing. So I know all of you got the memo that was in the packet that discussed some changes to the organizational structure at Rails. Chiefly the position that was currently at a level 9 about library resources and programs related to the Deals and Discounts program, as well as supervising several programs, including eRead Illinois, BiblioBoard, and Explore More Illinois, which you heard more about, and that is Layla Heath is in that position. So Layla was hired in April of 2019 in a position that at that time was a newly created position. Over the last 2 years, the position has really grown in scope from what it was originally envisioned as. including a lot of additional responsibilities and then the growth of the program itself. And so we did reevaluate that position this year with the help of HR Source, who monitored the description independently in terms of the work that's actually happening, and the recommendation came forward that that position be changed to a director level position, which would move this position also to part of the executive team at Rails. So any questions about anything that you saw in the memo or anything that you noted here?
Right, I think, thank you, Monica. I think the only thing I would add is that she has really brought an additional thing. That's not a very good word, but it didn't exist before, Layla, really. I mean, we did a few cooperative purchases, but she has really raised the level of this and has a lot of ideas for developing this even further, and even eventually a little, some a source of some revenue for Rails, as is the case in many other states that do a lot of this. So.
Yeah, and that, thank you, Deirdre, because that's one piece I did not mention, is that we did look at other systems and how they are incorporating these positions into their organizations and how that growth often drives those organizations. And so that was something that we certainly looked at in terms of being able to scope the position and the description as well. And some of the changes that you all have heard about recently are in support of some of these changes. So things like Consortium Manager, that software that's coming on board to help us even further be able to organize and grow that program, and the data infrastructure that Layla and Grant have been working on in terms of being able to make sure that our pricing and our all the different ways that we communicate with members around group purchases are done with that data piece in mind.
I will say, this is Becky, I worked with Layla when we were meeting with representatives about statewide databases, and she was invaluable bringing statistics and information, and that just from talking about levels of employees, that when we always are doing that at our library, talking about the director levels where you expect people to speak for the library, in this case, the organization without oversight, and that is what, she was doing, and she was representing the whole organization at a statewide level, and I feel like that is the director level too. So anyway, she was extremely helpful for that, and that's above and beyond, I'm sure, what she was originally hired for.
Questions? The board approves the compensation structure and the organization chart. That's why we bring this to you.
So can I have a motion and a second for the approval of the changes to the rail compensation plan and organizational chart?
Paul Mills, so moved.
Can I have a second?
Second, Jenna Nemec-Louisi.
Okay, Emily, will you call roll?
Sure. Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Chris Kenny, Sarah McComb Chase,
Yes.
Jennifer McIntosh,
Yes.
Paul Mills,
Yes.
Jenna McLuisi,
Yes.
Scott Poynton,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg,
Yes.
Beth Teppen,
Yes.
Alex Fancina,
Yes.
Sue Busenbark,
Yes.
and Hallie Cox.
Yes.
Michael Campbell.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now on to some.
Hi, Layla.
Oh, there she is.
Sorry.
Now on to unfinished business. Deidre and Monica will give an update on strategic planning, item number 9.1.
Yeah, so just a short update here. We did get 3 proposals. I think I put this in there in my report or packet somewhere. One of them was quite expensive. One of the people withdrew because of timing issues. Another one that I sought out couldn't have gotten back to us for like a year.
At least they were honest.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. Right. So I really think that Stephanie is the right person for us. I think she really has some interesting ideas. Just as an example, one of the things that she said, we need to think about this too. you know, July 1st is the 10th anniversary. I mean, we had, you know, Rails had its first board meeting on July something, 2011. Here we are in June of 2021. She says, you know, obviously that is a important, like, you know, foundation to use as a way to launch the strategic plan and what's happened since then, and you know, or what hasn't. I mean, it's obvious. It's just such a natural kind of jumping off point, you know. So so I want her to meet with the board soon. So I mean, not quite sure when we can make that happen, but I did send you her proposal a while ago, a couple of months ago when we first got it. It actually also took us, you know, some of the consultants shall remain nameless that we sought out really didn't get back to us very quickly, which is also not something that I'm at all interested in pursuing. So anyway, I just wanted to update you about that, and we'll bring her to meet with the board and, you know, provide you with more details as we know them. So it's going to be a busy year.
I was curious, you said you received 3 proposals back. Can I ask what the price ranges were that you for ones you actually received proposals for?
Yes, one of them was up over like around 50,000, and then one, it was actually Harry Christensen.
Oh yeah, I know Harry.
Was quite reasonable, but he withdrew because of his. He had some other work going on so he couldn't do it.
But he quoted between 25 and 40,
yeah, right,
dependent on travel.
It was,
sure.
yeah, right. It was right
Harry.
yes, about
it does.
It's right where Stephanie used to. She's right around 30. So
Okay.
we're finalizing that because, you know, a lot of that depends on virtual versus in person.
Right, because she's on the West Coast, right?
Well, but she has a colleague who lives in Wisconsin. So that is, and she's on the PLA board, so she thinks she'll be coming in for in-person meetings to Chicago. So that, you know,
like
there's going to be a lot of, you know, symbiosis, if that's the right word there, synergy, whatever it is. So, yeah, I think it's going to, she's already, I think, you know, Monica is going to be the point person on this. We're trying to figure out, I think we'd like to have a steering committee made up of board and staff. And, you know, last time that we did this, you know, we did redo the strategic plan in 2017 and 18, but we didn't use a consultant. We did the first time we did it. We used Nancy Bolt and Liz Bischoff, who were very, I think they've retired since then, but they were very, you know, they were much system and state library people, so it made sense because we were a brand new organization, and of course, there was no Zoom, there was a lot of that, so they were here, spent a lot of time here. But anyway, so now we're in a different time, different place. I think we can keep this pretty economical, but really do a great job, so.
So I was going to ask, do we have to vote? I don't know how this works on accepting the proposal.
No, I mean, I just usually sign those.
Right, because I don't know what our limit is that we have to vote. It's different than for a library.
Well, it's professional, this is all professional services, so.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Just want to clarify.
And it's in the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Perfect.
Right, so, but we'll resend you the proposal when we have it more nailed down to what the timing, you know, what we're going to do virtually, what we're going to do in person, and all that, so you can see it. But I just signed those contracts.
Okay. Thank you. Next up is item number 9.2, which is the FY22 draft budget and operational plan. The executive committee met on May 14th to discuss the budget. Specifically, we discussed the changes in delivery, the increased funding from the state for specific programs or via grants, and the low rate of return of interest income. We also discussed the growth of continuing education, e-content, My Library Is campaign, the member details and discounts, the one-time large expense items in the budgets are going to be things like the strategic planning consultants, just like what we discussed, website redesign, and EDI consulting. The committee would recommend a revisit of the budget after the first quarter of the new fiscal year and recommends to the board that the budget be approved as presented. The draft operational plan was also included. Do you have anything to add to that, Deidre?
Yes, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, what you have in your packet that you haven't seen before and that the the executive committee did not see was the budget narrative document that Jim prepares. This is the first document, Rails FY 2022 System Area and Per Capita Grant Application Detailed Budget Narrative. And Jim does a really great job here with some assistance, but really he does this great overview. It starts out with an overview of our major activities, and then he talks about the revenues, where they come from, what estimates are. As always, he's very conservative. He never predicts we're going to make a huge amount of investment income, because that's just not what he does or what I want to do. It's better to be pleasantly surprised than otherwise. And then he goes into the details of the expenditures, and obviously starting off with personnel. That is, as a service organization, it is a pretty big part of our budget. There is a 3% salary increase included in the budget. I would also say, just in general about the budget, I did have a conversation with Greg McCormick and Leslie Bednar about the structural deficit, is what I'm calling it. And as I told you previously, the state library seems quite willing, I guess is a good enough word, to reimburse us for some of the statewide programs like L2 and of course I'm forgetting the other one. The special cataloging of world languages that aren't done by the CMC. But it was interesting because I was, reminded, I guess, is that, there is clearly an expectation that the reason they want us to have reserves is so that we can spend them. They don't look at like local libraries look at it. It's like, this is why you have the money, yes, we'll have a conversation about an increase in the area per capita grant, but they definitely, I would say, have an expectation that if we have the money, we will be prudent, but we will also spend the money. That is, they do require, I think requires the right word, that we have, 12 months in the bank, so to speak, to have some coverage, but not an excessive amount of money in the budget that it's to be used for member services. So that was helpful and very positive in terms of moving forward. We did add some EDI language to the plan of service, just to be sure that we want to be sure that we have this, that we begin to have, I guess is probably the better way of putting it, the same expectations of our partners and vendors that we have of ourselves in relation to equity, diversity, and inclusion. So we added some, language to just kind of, flesh that out a little bit under various services. So happy to answer.
Does anyone have any comments or questions?
Just a comment. This is Paul, and one thing I think that Deirdre touched on is that Rails exists in that sphere between state agencies and units of local government. You see how things are treated, and that does the offering parameters are a bit different, at least where components from how state agencies operate and how units of local government operate. And, the state seems comfortable, with their approach of a deficit budget, for the year. So I'm having heard that, I'm comfortable with that, particularly with the concept of taking a close look at the budget in the first quarter of the new fiscal year. I think there's a lot of logic there.
Well, and thank you, Paul. And there's also this, the plan that is in the memo that I wrote to the executive committee about, yes, we're going to try to get an increase, absolutely. We think that we are definitely, going to look at internal restructuring, to save money. We did that in the past when we combined HR and finance. We're going to have some openings in finance. I don't know what's going to happen there. Identify some additional revenue streams. We can charge administrative fees for things like cooperative purchasing, and maybe we need to start thinking about that. We definitely need to have a conversation about restructuring or, our support for the LSAPs. We had a pretty good conversation at the executive committee about that. The delivery RFP is out there. It's possible we may see some big savings there. Maybe not. We don't know what that will. And just, monitor our expenses very closely. We always do. We feel no compulsion to spend every dime that, that we get every year. So I think that's everything I want to say.
This is Becky. I want to say that I really like the idea of combining us having an open discussion for the members in the state to see about controlling our costs, but I also am very much for the state taking over things that we provide for the entire state. And I think that us making that clear that shouldn't be our responsibility, and it's helping to lead to our deficit, but we're also looking at, our budget too. I think that the combination is an important discussion to have. So I'm glad we're doing both at the same time.
Well, it is an evolving situation too. I mean, and the state library grants money to Heartland to manage, for example, the catalog maintenance center and all the OCLC billing and all that goes on there. So this is not an unusual. It's just that this has come up. It didn't exist previously, So.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. If there are no questions, may I have a motion and a second for the approval of the FY 2022 draft budget and operational plan as presented?
Alex Vancina, so move.
Can I have a second?
I'll second. This is Chris Kenny.
Thank you. Emily, will you please call roll?
Chris Kenny.
Yes.
Sarah McCone Chase.
Yes.
Paul Mills.
Yes.
Jenna McLuisi.
Yes.
Scott Poynton.
Yes.
Becky Spradford.
Yes.
Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
Beth Teppen.
Yes.
Alex Vancina.
Yes.
Sue Busenbark.
Yes.
Hallie Cox.
Yes.
Diane Hollister.
Yes.
And Michael Campbell.
Yes. Okay. Before we move into the board development, I wanted to give us the opportunity to have a 5-minute break.
Oh, yes, of course.
And so it's 11:15. Let's take a 5-minute break. Be back here at 11:20, please.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Not all about.
Feels good to stand up.
Yeah. So Kendall, how's it going to be the easiest way to get here when you shut the ramp down? Go through East Peoria?
Yeah, I don't think the ramp's gonna be shut down very many days.
They're saying 4 weeks, I thought.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I'll have to look that up. There's two ways you could do it. You can come
Up Springfield Road.
up Springfield Road, or you can take the exit at the bottom of the hill and go underneath 74 and turn at the first stoplight by there used to be Wendy's, now it's.
Yeah, it's the Euro place.
Yeah, the Euro place, right? You turn right there, and then you go to the first stop sign and you turn right again.
Oh, like
And
they
then-
go past.
Then you
Nels
go up
Diner.
Sabrina Drive. I don't know what it's called, but it's got that really steep hill. And then you kind of cruise along and you go, and then you make a turn, and then you're on Sabrina Drive. So there's two ways to go. That, actually going that way is shorter than going all the way up.
Yeah, that hill is
around
immense.
Springfield.
I mean, it's like straight up.
Yeah, it's pretty steep.
Has the building been, has it been sitting vacant?
It's been vacant since March of last year. So it was Cintas who did uniform cleaning and delivery and some other things. And so when COVID hit and everybody went home, they had another facility in Peoria, and they're like, we can do this all out of one facility now. Why spend the money to have two?
Is it good shape or do you have to do a lot of?
It's in relatively good shape. They replaced all the ceiling tiles. They over the last year, I think they fixed the ceiling because there were quite a few ceiling tiles that were stained up from, warehouses tend to leak. So all that roof work had already been done. So they replaced all the ceiling tiles. They repainted the entire admin piece of the building. They're gonna put some new carpeting in and then clean the rest, and we'll see how that goes. There were a couple places where the carpet was kind of ripped, so they needed to replace it. So that'll get replaced, the rest will get cleaned. They're hiring somebody to do like a building deep clean, get all the ladybugs out of the light fixtures, and wipe everything down. Although the painters did a lot of that because they had to paint the walls. So as far as office space goes, it's in relatively good shape. I mean, they had patched all the holes in the wall and everything, so.
So our conference room here, you said it's gonna, over there will be smaller.
It's narrower. So the conference room and then the one main office room where I'll have 8 of my staff members share is 14 feet wide.
Okay.
And it's about as long as this room, the usable space. So imagine taking, about this much space off of this room.
Okay.
That's how big the room will be. So we'll have 5-foot tables, 3 on either side with a walkway down the middle. 2 people at each one, that's 12 people,
That's great.
which is more than enough to
Sure.
have a meeting here, so. All of this, excess space, like the big atrium where we could have 50, 60, 70 people, none of that. Right, you walk in, there's a small lobby that we'll put a table at to have one more place to have a little team meeting. And that's basically it. There's a couple of offices that we'll have 2 spare offices because the 8 people that share one room, whenever they do video training or a video visit, or they're recording training, like video training, recording a video to put up on YouTube or something, they can't be in a room where there's 7 other people talking and walking through and all of that. So we've got like 2 shared offices where people can go and do that kind of work where they need to be in someplace with a closed door.
So when I come up from Bloomington, I still get off on 98 and just follow the frontage road instead of coming across the highway.
Yeah, so instead of taking this frontage road, you'll take the frontage road on the other side. If you've seen, you maybe haven't seen, but it's about a 1/4 mile closer to the exit.
Okay.
So it's actually just like when you get down to where the brewery is here, across the road, that's where it is.
Okay.
And it's another tannish building with like little blue window cover things, little knockout blue window cover things, which is odd because we're in a tan building with a blue roof. So
when I get on 89 and then I go to the right, will I take a left or a right? I'll take a right, correct?
So you're coming from Bloomington down 74?
No, I get off on exit 98.
Is that Pinecrest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yeah, so you would get off on Pinecrest, but instead of turning to go over
Yes.
74, you turn right,
Okay.
and then you could go straight across the street to get back on 74.
Okay.
You go maybe 50 feet and there's a left turn for the frontage road there. And you go a quarter of a mile and that's where we'll be.
So when do they anticipate having this move made?
We are, not anticipate, we are moving on the 26th of June. We have to be out of this building and out of the delivery hub by the end of June. So the 18th, there's a board meeting on the 18th of June. We will be able to have that in this building. Everything else will be packed up at that point, except for like the tables and chairs in this room. And then when the board meeting's done, I will fold all the tables and chairs up and put them over there because we need to have everything finished by like the 18th. So.
So the, what is it, the radio company or whatever else is sharing this building, they're going to occupy the whole thing?
Yes, in fact, we know about that building across the street because I3, who has the rest of the building, they were looking.
Okay.
Expanding over.
I think we're going to get back.
Yeah.
And finish up here. We'll move on to item number 10, which is board development and the state of resource sharing in Illinois with Monica and Sean.
Good to see you.
Michael. And thank you all. I'm going to get some screen sharing going here in just a minute. But I know there's so much that we could say in terms of what is going on in resource sharing. We talk a lot throughout our board development and our other reports that we give all year long about what is happening in resource sharing, because resource sharing is such a huge core value in terms of what we do and accomplish. Just gonna try and get there, I'm sorry. So there really are a lot of ways that Rails is doing this work. Let me, okay, are you all able to see my screen here? Yep. And so Charmin, I wanted to be able to share that work with you today. I'm going to ask her to speak specifically to the resource sharing challenges that are seen throughout the year at her library. And she is also the chair of our resource sharing committee, and so she can share a little bit about that experience as well. And so this language that you're seeing here is directly from the Rails resource sharing plan. I think, one of the most important pieces to keep in mind here is that every Rails member faces the challenge of making the most of limited resources. We are a multi-type environment, but this is something that is definitely shared across all library types, is that libraries are not extravagantly funded places, and to make the most of sharing, resource sharing is vitally important to making sure that our success moves forward. So when we talk about what we mean by resource sharing, there's a lot of description that comes directly to these things that you might think of, especially when it comes to Rails and systems and resource sharing. So things like automated discovery tools, collection management, bibliographic description, delivery, interlibrary loan, reciprocal access, and reciprocal borrowing. These are all hugely important and very vital services. But resource sharing takes a lot of forms. And that's what I mean when I say we could really talk all day about resource sharing, because there's so many things that we're doing. If you look at the things that Jessica Barnes was sharing today with Explore More, that's a vital form of resource sharing that just started back up on April 1st. But there's a lot that we're doing in terms of our training, our consulting, our sharing of knowledge, and providing that infrastructure of connection that happens between libraries and allows them to share the information that they have and share. And that is really a huge part of what Rails sees as their role in terms of resource sharing. We wanted to share about some of the major forms of the year because this has been such a wild year. You hear a lot in the corporate world about disruption and how things about disruption can change and innovate. We are still kind of waiting to see how the pandemic is going to change library services into the future, but we are hearing a lot in terms of what our libraries are facing and how they are pivoting to changes and seeing what changes are actually going to end up being permanent changes. And so we're paying a lot of attention to what our libraries are saying. Delivery, of course, is one huge form of resource sharing. You hear a lot about delivery through the year. We wanted to share a little bit about the year in terms of what we're seeing for volume. So just yesterday, we were actually talking about some of the projected volume for fiscal year 21. So this is not a final number because the year isn't over. But if the trends that we're seeing continue, we would see about 8,102,910 items delivered through fiscal year 21. And so just an idea of how that compares to previous years, you can see the last pre-pandemic full year that we were at, that's about 89% of what we moved in that year. But it's a 19% growth over fiscal year 20, which of course saw a shutdown for some period of that. If you compare this, especially to what libraries are reporting in terms of their overall circulation numbers, this is also very interesting because what people are seeing is that their holds are still holding pretty steady in terms of what they're looking at compared to the kinds of circulation that might come more generally from browsing. You may not have as many visitors in the door, you may not have as many people in your building looking at materials, but you are still filling those holds and materials are still moving through delivery. So in terms of physical materials, Rails is still doing a lot. And so we just wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. The delivery RFP is also live, as Deirdre mentioned earlier. Those responses are due on July 12th. Any recommendations for organizational or operations changes or updates would happen by the September board meeting, just so you have a sense of the timing there. E-content and e-resources are, of course, another huge area when it comes to resource sharing. And we talked a little bit, our deals and discounts program has grown over 20%, and that's with some very aggressive negotiation in terms of prices even coming down. So 20% is a lot of growth, but that's also with additional savings that have come to members. Many deals, and there's some listed there that you can see. But there's other ways that e-resources and group purchases have been looked at in terms of e-resources, including the Vails vendor privacy policy pilot project. I don't know how many of you have seen that, but there's a group of over 20 libraries and Rails who've together listed their privacy solutions that they have through the Rails site, and so that libraries can share that information out with their own communities, and we would encourage many other libraries that have these kinds of e-content resources and want to share those privacy policies to check that out, because it's just one more way that members asked if Rails could be involved in sharing that information, and Rails was able to make that happen. Ebooks and e-content, we've also talked a lot about this year, that $125,000 ebook grant that came from the Illinois State Library. We're very grateful for that. That was chiefly focused on material for K through 12 users. We really saw an increased need during the pandemic to be able to respond to materials that were coming to those users. And we saw that in terms of the way that participation grew. So eRead Illinois grew 21% overall in fiscal year 21st, with a huge amount of that growth, 68% over the previous year, coming in participating school libraries. So that was an area where they were really looking for access to e-content in a changing year, and Rails was able to provide that. So we're very proud of being able to make some of those changes. So the impact of closures on library e-content usage, some of this, of course, remains to be seen, but we did want to call your attention. Anna Beam, with the help of Grant Halter, did a really great report that was released via OpenGov, really analyzing some of the usage that happened very early in the pandemic in terms of what was happening in libraries across all kinds of e-content platforms. And so they did see that there was a lot of increase in ebooks, just as people were reporting, something like 58% in that 58% year over year, compared to a 26% increase in March of 20th and a 19% increase in February 2020. The really big dramatic change happened in ebooks rather than audiobooks. We can infer that that might have been related to reduced commutes, that people weren't using audiobooks in the same way as they were before. But it was really interesting to see those changes in terms of e-content Part of our grant proposal that went to the state library for the $125,000 ebook grant was chiefly concerned with evaluation of that K through 12 ebook collection. And so as we end our sort of buying period is coming to an end, we are focusing and moving more to the evaluation period in terms of how people are using these resources that were purchased as a result of the grant. And we're very excited to be able to share that with members. I believe that some of that will also be shared as part of an ILA program that's coming up. So we're really excited about that. Virtual tools are a really interesting piece. This is another one where a lot came out of the pandemic. I think there was discussion earlier in the board meeting today that was just around how virtual training could extend to all kinds of things. Virtual tools like the Rails mailing list that became so vital during the pandemic, Rails member updates, the current library reopening status survey, and then more connection ways to learn during the pandemic. Rails also offered virtual training to trustees through the joint programming for trustees that happened through IHLS and ILA. And then we're just seeing that there's all kinds of things that are coming that may just be different than the way that it was before. There's the joint programming, virtual programming committee that's coming together around bringing libraries together around how to connect around providing virtual programming. Will virtual programming be the kind of thing that our library communities are wanting a year from now? Some of that remains to be seen, but it is a really interesting time to be looking at some of these pieces. And then the resource sharing committee is another important piece of this. We had a great conversation at our last meeting in May to really talk to the members of that committee around the kinds of things that they were seeing in their libraries and that they were interested in. So it was noted from that group that ebook use has increased and has not dropped with the reopening of libraries. And this was a discussion that we had in May of this year, so much more current than some of this data that we were looking at earlier. And as a result, there has been an increase in electronic resources budgets, and in some cases, a decrease in physical material budgets. There was also discussion, of course, that e-resources are still a relatively small percentage of overall circulation when it comes in comparison, but those numbers, people are paying a lot of attention to those numbers and how they're happening. Lois Bruno, who joined us from Nilrock, also introduced herself and talked about how the library had usually allowed for college students to be able to borrow textbooks, but the pandemic had impacted a lot of how they were able to handle resource sharing, and that there had been a large pickup on any type of ebook at the community college level as well. And then increased discussion on how the pandemic had been affecting collection numbers. And we're paying a lot of attention to that just to hear how libraries continue to move some of that stuff forward. And with that, I wanted to introduce you to Sharm Runke, who is generous enough to join us today. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this share, and she will discuss a little bit about resource sharing and how her library has been affected. Thank you for joining us, Sharm.
Oh, thank you for asking me. If you actually, Monica just did my whole speech with her wonderful slides. We talked back and forth, and it's like, okay, that was the point I wanted to make. I'll make it again, so you guys definitely will. I'm the director of the Peru Public Library. We're situated about halfway through the state off of I-80. We're about 5 miles from Interstate 80. And interestingly enough, we do see a lot of travelers from one end of the state to the other stopping in because, one, they know they can use our computers, and two, they know they can use reciprocal borrowing here. Yay, resource sharing. A little bit more about me. I at one time was a system consultant at the Lewis and Clark Library System, which is now part of the Illinois Heartland. While there, I had a number of different duties. One of them was resource sharing. Here, I currently am on the Rails Resource Sharing Committee, and then the consortium my library is part of, PuriCat. I'm on the resource sharing committee for there. I hate to tell, well, Carolyn with PuriCat and Deidre and Monica with Rails, but you'll kind of have to pry my cold dead hands to get me off of those committees. Resource sharing is my life. For most public libraries, local libraries, when we think resource sharing, the two most obvious things that come up are reciprocal borrowing and delivery. I cannot stress enough how much delivery underpins pretty much all the resource sharing, the physical resource sharing that goes on. Interlibrary loan, something that seems, to me after all these years, it's just commonplace. We actually, at the local library level, I firmly believe we see a higher rate of books being returned because of delivery. We'll get something that comes back from Greenville Public Library, and with an ILDS in delivery, and then to Rails on delivery to us with a note that this was left in their Dropbox. Well, in the old, without delivery, most likely Greenville would not have used the postage, their limited funds, to mail it to us, but it came back because of system delivery, because of resource sharing. Reciprocal borrowing is extremely popular. We're a twin city with LaSalle. We have the higher EAV. We have a slightly higher population. And normally, and pre-COVID, we have slightly larger, longer hours that we are open. So we see a lot of their patrons. We are the largest library for about a 20-mile radius until you get to Reddick in Ottawa or Princeton. And so we see a lot of those libraries' patrons here back and forth. And my staff and my board don't even bat an eye. Reciprocal borrowing is so ingrained into what we do, into resource sharing, that it's kind of like, oh yeah. When we're looking at holds, it's like, well, why hasn't this hold been filled? Why hasn't this request been filled? It's like, oh, it's not one of our patrons. It's another library patron who just wants to pick it up here, and it hasn't been tripped yet. Because they are all our patrons. We all get very possessive after. Monica has already mentioned, obviously last year we all saw a huge increase in the audiobooks and overall even the e-audiobooks that were used. Because the libraries were closed or people were not comfortable coming in. What I really do find interesting is, as part of resource sharing, obviously here at Peru we are part of EVID Illinois, is those numbers haven't been dropping. Now that spring is here, usually we see a decrease in access. Granted, our physical numbers aren't pre-COVID quite yet, but our e-read in that, they're actually staying up or even increasing. Wonderful way to look at resource sharing. I guess I'm thinking that people knew about it, but they didn't care about it, no big deal. When suddenly it's like, this is the only way I'm going to get my books. I like it, I love it, I'm not going back to the physical book. I'm going to be really curious to see what circulation is between the physical item versus the electronic item over the next few years. Will that move back? How will that shift around? Here at the local public library, we basically definitely know we have two populations that use the library. We have the browsers, and not the best of term, but we have the listers. The browsers come in, they look at the new bookshelves, they just kind of wander around the building, and when they came in, they're going to get 1 or 2 books, and they end up leaving with 5 or 6 books. Then the listers are the ones who follow book page, library reads, what our recommended books are here, what the bestsellers are, and of course their favorite authors. This last year, actually, it's a little bit over a year now, the browsers have been the ones who were really, really hurt with COVID. The other group, the listers, fine and dandy. As soon as we opened holds back up, they were in placing holds. We really have actually as much, if not more, holds being placed to pre-COVID numbers. I don't know if that means some of my browsers have been whether they like it or not, have been forced into looking at the catalog and placing holds, or if my listers are just so into reading right now that they're placing requests left and right. And of course, we're a shared database. We're with Prairie Tech, so that makes it really easy. If we don't have it, they know they're going to get it. They're going to get it through delivery with Rails. See how I always get delivery back in there? And we talked about delivery. Monica had also asked me to kind of mention where do I see concerns? What concerns do I have with resource sharing? And it's one that I've had for basically 30 years now. It is so ingrained here in Illinois. It is just a given. We circulate books, we do reciprocal borrowing, we do interlibrary loan. That's what libraries, regardless, public, academic, school, that's what we do. I'm always concerned that new board members coming in won't understand, or it's such a given that we will forget to orientate them to what reciprocal borrowing is or what resource sharing is. And new library directors, do we make sure that they are indoctrinated into how important this is? Years and years ago, I had a board member from still at Lewis and Clark, a member library, who called me because I was the resource sharing person, very upset because when they drove through their library's parking lot, they saw most of the cars did not have the local community license sticker that they should have. To him, that indicated that these were obviously cars from away. And so I needed to do a very positive 5-10 minute elevator speech as to what reciprocal borrowing is, what resource sharing is, and that this is a good thing. Finally, when I was talking with him, it hit me. I was using library jargon, which obviously, as a relatively new board member, he wasn't familiar with, and that was my fault, not his. I finally hit upon, this is the same as mutual aid with fire departments. And I could, over the phone, see the little light bulb go off over his head. Oh, I get it. And so that's something that has, again, stuck with me. How do we make sure these new board members and these new mayors, new elected officials, new librarians, how do we make sure they understand and appreciate resource sharing? Which is why we have Rails, which is why we have Illinois State Library and Illinois Heartland, to make sure we get the word out and people understand. Can't stress enough just how wonderful the systems really are. Okay, now I'm going to shut up, and if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Sharm. And thank you so much for those comments and really sharing those pieces, as well as that history in Illinois and why that's important. Before we open it up for questions, I did also want to share some comments from another resource sharing committee member, Jeannie Medelsky. She couldn't be here today, but she wanted to share her comments with the board. I know we've heard the comments about how important resource sharing can be to public libraries, to school libraries, to college libraries. Jeannie Medelsky is an information scientist and global knowledge services person at Ecolab, so she works in a special library and wanted to talk about how resource sharing is important to them. So while many special libraries don't have any resources to participate in ILL lending, and I wish we did, my library does engage in ILL borrowing and have found it to be a very important resource. Many times we have a researcher interested in a very expensive book, but they want to peruse the volume first to make sure that it meets their needs. In this case, we usually borrow the book first to give the researcher a preview. We also engage in sharing in other ways. We've hosted tours of our library in non-pandemic times for SLA members and library technology students from the College of DuPage, and we've also had students from that program complete their practicums with us. We've engaged in best practice conversations with other libraries on topics ranging from the handling of subscriptions, e-resources, intellectual property security, etc. These conversations have led to many insights into better ways of doing things and better vendors for certain services. These conversations go both ways. Each party can learn and share with the other party. So there's a lot of ways that we're all using resource sharing. And so at this point, I'd like to open it up for questions for Sharm and myself.
Thanks to you both. That was excellent. Yeah, really great overview.
Okay, thank you, Monica and Charm. Okay, on to board member reports, item number 11. Would anyone like to share anything happening at their library? Okay. Okay. Item number 12, meeting, the June Rails board meeting will be held on Friday, June 25th at 1 p.m. We're back to 1 o'clock. Items on the agenda include the 6-month review of our closed session minutes, an update on Rails continuing education programs, and under board development, a report on collaboration between Rails, IELTS, IHLS, and ILA. Anything else?
Well, let's see.
And we'll have the nominating committee.
Yeah, we'll have the slate. And in terms of the recap for this meeting, we had a good conversation about the election and board visibility issues. Member the board being more, present, more visible in things that Rails does, like member updates, et cetera. So we'll continue to work on that piece. We're going to tell you more about strategic planning, and obviously we will continue throughout the year to update you on the budget plan and the various pieces of that.
Michael, actually, on the Rails website, it says the meeting's June 18th. So is it the 25th or is it the 18th?
25th is during ALA. I thought maybe that's why it was changed.
It's the 18th. Okay.
It's the 18th.
Sorry about that.
Oh, okay, so it's the 18th.
Okay.
I'm going to put that down. I had a comment coming from something that Deidre said during the meeting. It would be great if we could have a conversation about doing something at the July meeting to honor the 10th anniversary of Rails. So if we could discuss that at the June meeting?
Yeah, great idea.
Because that came up, and I think we should at least do something, even if it's just acknowledge it, but we should talk about it in June.
Okay. Any other comments?
Thank you for that. I have it down on
Okay.
also.
So item number 13 is the closed session. The board will move into closed session to discuss matters pertaining to personnel. As per Illinois compiled statute, chapter 120, paragraph 2, section C1, which states the exceptions of a public body may hold closed meetings to consider the following subjects: the appointment, employment compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body or legal counsel for the public body, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee of that public body or against legal counsel for the public body to determine its validity. May I have a motion to move into closed session?
So moved, McCombs.
This is second, Becky Spratford.
Emily, will you call roll?
Yes. Sarah McComb Chase.
Yes.
Paul Mills.
Yes.
Jenna McLuisi.
Yes.
Scott Poynton.
Yes.
Becky Spratford.
Yes.
Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
Beth Teppen.
Yes.
Alex Fancina.
Yes.
Sue Grusenbark.
Yes.
Kelly Cox.
Yes.
Diane Hollister.
Yes.
Chris Kenny. Oh, Chris left, I'm sorry. And Michael Campbell.
Yes. Okay, we will now move into closed session. Live stream will stop and then resume when we move out of closed session.
Opening up my document.
The non-board member Zoom meeting participants will be moved into the waiting room until the board votes to move out of closed session. Item number 14 is actions to follow up to the closed session. Those include compensation that the board needs to vote.
Michael, we need to do the vote to come back into open.
Oh, yes. So,
Thanks, Paul.
so Emily, would you call roll for that?
We need a motion and a second.
We had that in the closed session, but not the vote.
Okay,
So we just need to vote.
okay. Paul Mills,
Yes.
Shannon Nemeth-Louisi,
Yes.
Scott Poynton,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg,
Yes.
Beth Teppen,
Yes.
Alex Vancina,
Yes.
Sue Busenberg,
Oh, she had to leave.
You have to leave, Emily.
That's right, I'm sorry. Hallie Cox,
Yes.
Diane Hollister,
Yes.
and Michael Campbell.
Yes.
I think I got everybody.
You didn't call
Emily,
me.
do you need?
I'm sorry.
This is Sarah McCone
Chase.
Chase. Yes.
I forget where I start and leave off when people leave. Sorry about that.
No offense is taken. I just wanted to make sure we got it done.
Thank you.
We should see, ask, yeah.
Okay. Next up is,
He moved the microphone.
next up is actions to follow up to the closed session. Those include compensation for the executive director, ways to improve the survey for the performance evaluation for next year. Those were the two key takeaways.
Okay, and you wanted 5, right? That was what you
Yeah.
said? Okay.
Compensation will be
Right?
public, what do you have to say?
We would typically make a motion for the compensation adjustment.
Yeah,
Do we need to do that now, or do we,
I think so because it has to be part of the
I
budget.
don't think there's a reason to wait.
Yeah.
I think we
Okay.
can do it, yeah.
can we do it now?
Yes.
Okay.
So I would make a motion to adjust the executive director's compensation with a 3% increase.
Do we have a second?
This is Scott, I'll second it.
Hey, we're all seconding.
Okay. Emily, will you call roll, please?
Yes. Let me
Good
see.
day.
Shannon Nemeth-Louisi,
Yes.
Scott Poynton,
Yes.
Becky Spratford,
Yes.
Thomas Stagg,
Yes.
Beth Teppen,
Yes.
Alex Vancina,
Yes.
Hallie Cox,
Yes.
Diane Hollister,
Yes.
Chris Kenny left, Sarah McCone Chase,
Yes,
Jennifer McIntosh.
she left too.
I know that. Thank you. Paul Mills. Sorry about that.
It's a holiday weekend moving. There's a lot of moving.
It does highlight why we have this meeting at 10
Well,
a.m.
you didn't call Michael Campbell, are we?
Michael Campbell. Sorry about that.
Yes, I was just
Man.
waiting. I was like,
I
she
saw
lost
you
her mind.
waiting. I see
I
her
was
like leaning
okay.
forward.
My attendance sheet looks like a football diagram.
Yes. So I won't confuse you anymore, Emily. So,
Sure.
We'll just go.
if there is no other further business, we will move to adjourn.
Have a good weekend,
Thank
everybody.
you all.
Yeah,
Have a
enjoy the
safe
extra day
holiday
off.
weekend.
Thank
I
you.
adjourn at 12:28.